I also saw you had some thoughts on how Tornado Cash sanctions will affect Ethereum under proof of stake. Maybe you could go into your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I have to say the timing on that news is just, I mean, yeah, as a storyteller, I'm like, way to create high drama, um, because obviously I mean, this is just in the works, it's not like Ethereum's going to halt. However, once that happened, it created, a lot of questions around how might this work under proof of stake, and it frankly highlighted a lot of ways that the kind of new system for validating blocks potentially has certain centralization points. And some of the game theory, you probably saw this on Twitter. People were saying things like, "Oh, well, we end up with like an OFAC chain and a non-OFAC chain. How is this going to play out?" And a lot of this, just isn't clear even at the moment because the regulators have not come out and explained how people are supposed to implement these sanctions. Hopefully viewers of your show will already know that this was unprecedented for a smart contract or series of smart contracts to be put on the sanctions list. And so I did a long episode around kind of some of the issues highlighted here. And one of the guests, Martin Koppelman, who has been a developer in the Ethereum ecosystem for a very long time, he pointed out that, so let's say that you're a block builder or even a proposer, meaning that you're going to propagate networks on blocks on the network. You wouldn't necessarily know if there's a transaction in there that might, for instance, cause something to happen in a smart contract that could then initiate a Tornado Cash transaction. So even if you're trying to sort of follow the law here, like if you're sending it to a sanctioned address, obviously that's something obvious. But if it's just sending it to some other smart contract that later down the line triggers this other thing, like you wouldn't necessarily know that. But in terms of some of the centralization risks, I'm sure you saw that because of this news, Flashbots, which has been building this MEV boost, which is software that's going to enable something called proposer builder separation, which is the sort of process to which Ethereum would like to move under proof of stake. That's the direction that they've chosen to go. And yet, because MEV boost at that time was and for the merge will be the only quote unquote relay or the only software that does that function, they decided to open source the code in advance so as to decentralize. And we're seeing just in general that, a number of entities that are going to be involved in this process have sort of kind of indicated that they will sort of like voluntarily step back from doing things that could lead to this centralization. For instance, Coinbase is set to be one of the largest validators under the proof of stake system. It's obviously got U.S. jurisdictional exposure because it is a publicly listed company here in the U.S. And so the CEO, Brian Armstrong, said, "We would rather leave our staking business than try to enforce these sanctions." And, who knows whether or not that's an official statement from Coinbase. He just said this basically in a tweet. I don't know if, the board is with him on that. But all of this is to say that if you have a blockchain that relies on people to kind of foster decentralization, then that means essentially it's probably not censorship resistant, because it's sort of like, relying on these actors to act in good faith.
I'm just curious, are you staking by any chance? Or, are you, what would you recommend retail investors do? Should they stake, become a node? And I have a quick question about, your Arthur Hayes interview, but go for it.
Okay. Well, I don't make recommendations around what people should do with their money. So, unfortunately, the advice I'm going to give is that you should do your own research. You should understand what if you're interested in doing this, what that would mean for you and your own personal financial situation. There's no, one size fits all answer for anyone. No, no.
Okay. And from your Arthur Hayes interview, one of the key points I thought was interesting is like the merge ultimately doesn't matter in terms of the price of Ethereum or other cryptocurrencies for that matter, but it's really what the Fed does in terms of their balance sheet and the dollar liquidity out there. I don't know, what were your thoughts on, what were the key things that you learned from Arthur?
Yeah, I said this in the interview, but Arthur had a way of just simplifying everything down, because in the interview, I kind of kept asking him about, the merge's effect on Ethereum and the price of ETH and et cetera. And he just kept saying, look, this is a one-time change. It's going to be a positive change because it will drastically reduce the issuance. And, I was saying like, oh, well, at the moment, if the usage on Ethereum continues as it's been for the last month, then it will actually still be slightly inflationary. He said, I don't care. It's still going to be way less issuance than it currently is. And similarly, with about the monetary spot. Yeah, he was saying about the crypto markets in general that what he's boiled it down to is that the price of Bitcoin and in general, sort of, how high flying the crypto markets are really just depends on the money supply and the liquidity in the system. I'm sure, this just partly relates to how willing people are to invest in speculative assets. And so when there's a perception that things are tightening up, they, will pull that liquidity from these speculative assets. But yeah, again, he just kept simplifying things down, and it was a very fascinating and fun conversation.